Hi everybody, welcome back to the Bene channel. So I'm really excited today because this morning I drove to Chicago with my family and I'm here with Ken Butigan, who also works for Bene. And so we just went to his great class at DePaul University and we're here with him to talk about it. And so Ken, thank you so much for having us.
It is so wonderful to finally meet you in person.
This is awesome.
Rosie, and I'm so glad you could come to this course.
Thank you. So Ken, we just attended your class and I was wondering, could you tell our audience a bit about, what this class was about, what it's called, and how your semester was?
Great. Well, I've been able to teach at DePaul for about 15 years now.
Yeah.
And I've been able to teach on everything I want to teach about, which is peace and nonviolence and justice. And this course was called Race, Resistance, and Power. And we wanted to grapple with white supremacy and systemic racial injustice for the last 5 centuries, but also from the point of view of the movement for reparations. And so that was our whole focus. We studied movements that have worked for reparations and for justice, and we were all working on different facets of the racial injustice that needs repair. And so that's what we were doing. And today, for example, we had a presentation from students looking at education and reparations. And it's been a really great experience to just explicitly focus on the violence of racism and to just together say we're going to be allies and agents of change to have that reparation and repair in our society that so sorely needs it.
Yeah, that is so awesome. I really enjoyed the class and I was really grateful to sit in. And I was also so happy to show them my most recent video. If you haven't seen it, it's linked. And I was wondering about, I know you talked a lot about nonviolence in this class. And I was wondering about what you see as sort of a path forward for us in this era of, we're having so many mass shootings. And I'm kind of wondering how you see nonviolence as a way forward with that.
Well, nonviolence really begins with lament. So it's so important for us to lament this violence.
Yeah.
To not pretend that we have easy solutions, but to also really want to find our way forward. And the nonviolence movement over the last 5,000 years has been teaching us that we have more power than we think. We can be involved in solutions around ending the tyranny of guns and the attitudes that pull that trigger. So it's critical that we continue to build movements that alert, educate, win, and mobilize the populace for change. It's not going to be easy. I was recently reflecting on a piece that I wrote right after Sandy Hook.
Right.
And here it is 10 years later, and we see this onslaught. At the same time, I'm a big believer in movements. I'm a big believer in people power. I'm a big believer in you and me and your sister and people all over this country and this world. That we can withdraw our consent from this kind of madness and create alternatives. So that's where I come down in the end.
That's amazing. And I was so happy to hear from your students, on their ideas. And I just felt like they had really concrete ideas for change. And I was so impressed. And I'm also wondering, this is kind of an exciting question for me. I'm wondering, what are you excited about with the next year of Bene?
Well, I always start off with this thought that the greatest social movement in human history is coming.
Yeah.
And it's coming right at us. We do not know what that will look like. The 2020 iteration of Black Lives Matter really launched this latest, greatest movement. But the greatest movement is coming.
Yeah.
And why do I say that? Because it has to.
Yeah.
Because if we're going to make it through the 21st century, it's because you and me and your sister and people all over this planet are going to pull their people power, their smarts, their creativity, their gumption.
Yeah.
So Pace Bene exists to support that. It started now over 30 years ago, and I've worked at Pace Bene for 32 years.
Yeah.
And it's all been about mainstreaming nonviolence and saying all of us have this power and we can tap it. And we can't do it by ourselves. We need other ordinary, cranky, beautiful, resilient human beings to tap and to pull that power. In this next year at Pace Bene, we are on the process of creating a self-paced training program that anybody can download and use, and that's going to be pulling together all the wonderful exercises and principles and learnings over these 3 decades.
Yeah.
So watch for that.
Yes.
And there are a lot of things. We are in our 10th year of Campaign Nonviolence. So last year, 4,300 great actions all over the U.S. and beyond during the 3rd week of September. So we're working on that. All sorts of people are working on that. Shayna Jones and Rivera's son, and all of us are involved in that effort. And I also continue to respectfully urge the Catholic Church, my own religious tradition, to once and for all embrace nonviolence. And so for 7 years, I've been working with Pax Christi International's Catholic Nonviolence Initiative. And we're just continuing that work, and we've since, almost daily, there are some good steps in the direction. We hope that Pope Francis will share with the Church and the world a major document or call for nonviolence called an encyclical. And that work will continue.
Wow. I am so excited with you, Ken, along with you. And thank you so much for having us here today. This has just been a joy.
Oh, but we can't stop at the moment. I have to add one thing. We are very fortunate to have, as our arts and media coordinator, you, Rosie. You are an amazing, beautiful, powerful, smart, creative, and deeply artistic human being, and you're bringing all the ways for us to help frame and understand what nonviolence means, what injustice means, and how we can respond to it. And we're very, very grateful that you're on the planet. And you told me a story recently that you said that at some point when you were younger, you hoped to work with Pace Bene.
I did.
Can you tell me that story?
So I was 11 years old when I got interested in nonviolence. And then when I was about 15, I started to read about like the Berrigans and Liz McAllister and John Deere. And I saw your TED Talk and I looked up Pace Bene. And then I sat there and I read and I read and I read and I watched as many videos as I could, you know, and then I thought, maybe if I work really hard when I'm 40, if I'm really lucky, they'll take me. And then it was like 4 years later, so like it was 2 years ago this month when they brought me on as their youth intern, and I've been so grateful, met so many amazing people. You know, it was funny, we were at the youth collective and they were playing this game where you kind of rapid fire ask questions and then you give answers, and someone asked, what's your dream job? And I said, the job I have right now. And so I'm just so grateful, and Ken, you've just supported me like every step of the way, and so it's just an honor and a joy, so thank you.
Well, it's an honor and a joy for the rest of us. Thank you for who you are as well as what you do, and it was fun to get together in my classroom.
Yes. Thank you so much, Ken.
Thank you.
Bene channel. We are so happy to be here with Kathy Kelly. You guys have heard me talk with Kathy Kelly before, but we're so excited to be in her home visiting her. And Kathy, thank you for having us here today.
Oh, well, I look forward to meeting your family. This has been just wonderful. All of a sudden, Rosie is even more Rosie.
Thank you. And so, Kathy, I just was so excited when we learned we would get to come here to visit you. And I wanted to ask some questions about a lot of the work you're doing these days. And I heard about a man, a Yemeni man, Adel Amantarai. And could you tell us a bit about him and a bit about what you're trying to raise awareness for with his situation?
Well, Adel and his family live in Yemen, and that's a country that's been at war for 7 years. Now, as it happened, Adel was a government worker.
Mm-hmm.
The United States has, in its war on terror, targeted some people without any opportunity for the targeted person to appear before a judge or weighing of evidence in any conversation. They will target people, and if somebody is considered to be a target, then that person can be hit by a missile fired by a United States drone, and then anybody with the person is not so likely to survive. So it was 2018, and Adel was a family man. With 4 children, and he was in a car. He and 4 of his cousins were actually trying to make a real estate deal, and they all had to be in on seeing the property before a decision was made. And somehow, as you know, there has been admission after investigation that this was a mistake, that all of these men were innocent of being connected to any kind of terrorist group, but the 4 cousins were killed, and Adel was badly maimed. He survived, but of course, you know, a survivor of a drone attack is going to have trauma, serious trauma all their life. But he also, after the first surgeries, discovered, this happened in 2018, and now in 2022, doctors said, you need an operation. It's called a fasciotomy. It had to do, he would lose his legs entirely if the gangrene that was beginning to set in wasn't dealt with. And there weren't many hospitals that could help him, so he'd have to go to Cairo and in Egypt. And so a group of people who've been legally representing many of the victims who are survivors of drone attacks, they're in Britain, and they're called Reprieve. They put out a word saying, can anybody help this man? Because he doesn't have the resources, and he may not only lose his legs, he may lose his life. So fortunately, some very good journalists began to write about his story, and we said, okay, we've never done a GoFundMe before with ban killer drones, but we'll try it. And so I'm so relieved and grateful to those who have helped to tell Adel's story. Adel has now, in Egypt, had the first surgery, and it was as the doctors hoped it would be. And now he has 2 more surgeries, a lot of physical therapy. He has an injured arm that still hasn't healed properly. He had a fractured hip, and that has to be dealt with, and bed sores. But his children are with him in Egypt, and his spirits are much better. And the amazing thing to me is that after Democracy Now!, I think you saw that segment, aired that, we now have, on the GoFundMe account, $31,000. So this will be a great help to Adel and his family, because like I said, he's going to have a lifetime of coping with this. But it's interesting, they asked the Department of Defense, do you have anything to say? The journalist asked. Adel himself has thought, I didn't do anything. I've been badly maimed. My cousins were slaughtered. The breadwinners are gone out of our family. And the United States has just turned away from Adel al-Manthari. And so it's, average, ordinary people who say, we should be paying reparations for suffering caused. And this is all around the world, but many people in the United States as well. So our campaign, Ban Killer Drones, wants to say that every person who's been attacked by a drone should be compensated, and the United States should just come clean and say, here are the people. They've got the list. And they should disclose the names and the circumstances of every victim. And then I believe a treaty is necessary worldwide, an international treaty to prohibit weaponized drones, because this is a direction that makes war easier and easier. It makes killing easier and easier. So we have a lot to learn from Adel al-Manthari.
Yes, thank you, Kathy. And when you were talking about Adel, I liked it. You said he's a family man, and and yet he was attacked. And I'm wondering what a lot of people, sometimes I tell people about these drones, and they think, oh, well, what can I do? I can't do anything to stop it. But there are things that people can do. And I'm wondering if you could go through some of what those are, so if our audience is watching, if anyone's watching, then they can contribute to the cause to end this.
Well, we have a good website, bankillerdrones.org, and loads of photos of all of the different activities people have taken. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking we should use Independence Day and
Yes.
call for independence from drones. And
Mm-hmm.
we actually have a postcard that
Mm-hmm.
we encourage people to fill
Oh.
out. And this is actually a sculpture of a drone in New York City that's mounted on the High Line plinth on a great big tall pole. And so our friends are out there every Saturday afternoon passing out these postcards and asking people to fill them in and talking to them about drones.
Yeah.
And there are drone bases all across the United States.
Yeah.
And so it's a good idea to find out where is the closest base to where you live that's operating drones. And now I went to ask some questions that I thought were valid at the Whiteman Air Force Base. I wanted to know, did your base kill any civilians today or this week? And how do the manuals help the pilots who never leave the trailer or the room that they work in? How do the manuals help them distinguish between combatants and non-combatants? And what if somebody wants to quit being a drone operator? Can you help them if they're feeling like their conscience is very troubled? And I offered a loaf of bread along with my questions, and that's how I last went to prison. I got a 3-month prison sentence instead of answers to my questions. But it was a worthwhile thing to do.
Yes,
We're very concerned, though, for a young man who was a drone analyst, and his conscience bothered him so deeply that he disclosed information about how during a 5-month period in Afghanistan, 90% of the people killed were not the people that were supposedly a targeted terrorist.
Wow.
So he, that's all, it's a government document.
Right.
And so he made a copy of it and he slipped it to Jeremy Scahill.
Yeah.
So now he's in prison for 4 years in the Marion Penitentiary. So people could also go to a website called Stand with Daniel Hale.
Yes.
And maybe correspond with him.
Yes.
Or learn ways to draw more attention to his message.
Yeah.
Which is such an important message for us. So Congress people ought to be contacted. Senator Durbin in Illinois, which is where I'm from, did hold a hearing. I felt that he kind of let some of the issues go. He didn't stay with what was being demanded by the human rights organizations, for instance, but at least the hearing happened. Drones are being sent to Ukraine, and this is going to escalate and exacerbate the war.
Yeah.
And I believe it's a crucial time to press political leaders, religious leaders, community leaders, educators to seek a ceasefire.
Yes.
To call for negotiation. Believe that words can be stronger than weapons.
Yes.
And to recognize that the nuclear disaster that could happen. The Chinese have developed a drone that can carry a tactical nuclear weapon. I mean, this proliferation is all over the world. And with climate catastrophe, it goes to the back burners while everybody keeps focusing on wars and militarism. And we see where that gets us. This preoccupation with constantly solving things through weapons, through military.
Yeah, I know that my mom works, one of the biggest populations in our county is Ukrainian, and I know she works with a lot of them and keeps pushing for, we need peace, we need a ceasefire, and that's one of the things that she's been helping with a lot, and I think that's so important. So
I'm afraid that what is a traditional war in terms of the war that Russia is waging against Ukraine is happening while at the same time a geopolitical war is going on. And I'm afraid that the United States is going to want to use Ukraine as proxies, in a sense, to weaken Russia. And they've actually said, General Lloyd Austin said, I want to weaken Russia, or we want to weaken Russia. And we should be recognizing Russia has security concerns. And that's what you do when you negotiate, you dialogue, you try to see, well, what's your side?
Yeah, that's so important. Thank you, Kathy. And I'm also wondering about what people can do about the war in Yemen. I know that the war in Ukraine is getting a lot of attention, and I think that, you know, I don't see as much attention in a lot in the media for the war in Yemen, and yet there are so many atrocities going on there. And so can you tell us a bit about that and what we can do for that as well?
Well, there's atrocity, and there's also, related to the war, certainly, cholera and hunger and displacement and refugee circumstances. And Yemen has been bludgeoned. It's really, the Saudis have hit them very, very hard with arsenals that couldn't function. Their aircraft could not function without the United States support. The U.S. supplies spare parts. The U.S. teaches them how to use these weapons. And so one thing we can press for is for the United States to say to the Saudis, end the blockade.
Right.
And we're not going to service your air war any longer. We're not going to help you continue to bomb people in Yemen. But unfortunately, it looks as though President Biden is more or less going to go to Saudi Arabia hand in hand and say to Mohammed bin Salman, well, you know, actually, we would like to continue to help you with your war in Yemen. You're doing a great job getting people to the negotiating table, and could we please have some oil? And in a way, you know, that's not challenging Mohammed bin Salman on human rights abuses within his own country, on the war crimes that are clearly have been committed by the Saudis in Yemen, and also his repression of women in his own country. I mean, to go and shake his hand is also in a way to say, well, we know you killed Jamal Khashoggi, and but you know, we'll look the other way on that. So I find that very, very disheartening. Very. I think that you know, the Saudis and also the United Arab Emirates are kind of playing hardball, and President Biden just lost.
Yes. And
but so did many, many Yemeni children, and they can't be held responsible for the government. I don't think the Houthi are a nonviolent group by any means, but you don't punish children.
No, never. And thank you, Kathy, and thank you.
And I do want to say that in terms of what people can do, there is a War Powers Act, a Yemen War Powers Act, which would take the ability of the president to make decisions about, do we go to war or do we not go to war against Yemen. It would have to be a congressional decision.
Oh, wow.
And so Representatives Jayapal and De Fazio have introduced the bill in the Congress. Good. Senator Bernie Sanders is one of the co-sponsors in the Senate, along with, well, there are quite a few now, Congress people and senators who are signed on to this bill. And there are teams all around the United States working to get this bill passed. You know, it passed before and President Trump vetoed it, but it's taken a very long time for the lawmakers to come up with a new bill. And I think the fact that this bill exists could actually have something to do with the fact that the truce has held so far. I hope it will get renewed.
Well, please look into that bill. I'll put some resources in the description. And Kathy, to close, I just wanted to ask, you know, we're living in very difficult times, and what in this time gives you hope?
Well, the young people give me a great deal of hope. I see people who care deeply about the planet, who are taking diversity and union together with other people that are different from themselves for granted. And I think that's great. You know, when I go to a high school and I see, you know, some young women wearing a hijab and some young men who clearly have just come from another country, and people speaking Spanish and people speaking Arabic, and they're all sitting together, and it's no big deal. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful sign. And also there are young people all around the world, those who've said, you know, don't try to solve the crisis in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, by getting more fossil fuels from other countries. Let's get ourselves off of fossil fuels. And so when I see people taking those kinds of risks and learning how to speak clearly to power and about power, I do feel hopeful then. And I also think it's good to listen to the elders.
Yes.
There is also some very, in Afghanistan, we're trying to help young people there get the hang of permaculture, but I think they should also maybe see what their grandparents did to make the land produce food. That's so necessary right now. Permaculture is a really important development these days.
Yeah, totally. Oh, well, thank you so much, Kathy.
Thank you for this time. I'm always happy to speak with you, Rosie.
Thank you. This has been a joy.
And all best to all your colleagues at Pache Bene.
Thank you.